you're going to be as healthy as the food you eat. You're not going to be healthy if you're eating crap all the time, right? But it's not just a matter of food. What are you feeding your soul? What are you feeding your
Mm.
mind and your heart and your persona and your psyche? You are what you eat. I think it's even more true here than it is in the stomach. Welcome to the College of Valor, where we empower truth seekers with the art of reason. Hope is the motivation, truth is the goal. Everyday valor is the practice, better living is the result. Hi, friends. Kurt here. And Lydia's here too. Say hi, Lyd.
Hi, guys.
And this is College of Valor again. Today, we are talking about pop culture and the influence and power that sometimes we give it and how it is changing things and changing perhaps your life. I want to start with a story. I think this is related. Maybe you can too. But I went skiing yesterday, which was awesome. I love it that the
Whoop
ski season has started
whoop.
up. Yeah, man. And I should say snow skiing for those of you who water ski and need to know it was snow skiing. Anyway, I saw this little 2-year-old, maybe 3-year-old girl, all dressed in her ski get up. I mean, she had the helmet, she had the mittens, she had the little powder suit, and she was so cute and so excited and so innocent. Even though, by the way, children are not innocent. Get over that. No, they seem innocent because we forgive them for everything they do because they don't know better. And maybe there's something there we need to think about. But this cute little darling, like a clean canvas, ready for the painting to begin. And then in the lift line, I saw these two other girls. They were probably 9 years old, and they were skiing unsupervised, which is pretty amazing. But they were really, really good skiers, obviously grew up on the slopes. And these two girls were having the time of their lives, chatting with each other, and they're all grown up on their skis. And these 9-year-olds, again, not as innocent, but still children, beautiful, having so much fun. And they were cutting in front of people in the lift line, and they didn't even know it. They weren't doing it on purpose. They were just so excited about their world that they didn't even realize what was going on around them. Okay, fast forward, jumping on the bus back to the parking lot, and some high school students jumped on, some girls and guys, and young, enthusiastic, not nearly as innocent. that was well, largely gone, but life hadn't beat them up too much yet. And I was watching this progression, Lydia, from the unmarred fresh canvas, ready to receive paint that I saw in that little like 3-year-old, and the progression of how people develop and change into something else as they get older. And we could continue on past high school real easily and get to college, where that shapes people. That's the first time for most people that they really are on their own, so to speak, away from home, either good or bad, but they have the experience of being out from under the watchful eyes of whoever their caregiver was. After college, getting a job and learning to adult and pay your own bills and enter into serious relationships and maybe even starting a
Yeah,
family.
I don't know any about that.
It's crazy, but
I don't
for
know.
some reason, I was struck yesterday while skiing with how life changes so much as we grow up. And it doesn't stop,
Mm.
when you're an adult. It doesn't stop. You keep on growing and changing, and life can become better and better and better. And that's the goal of College of Valor. So, anyway, but then I was also thinking today about pop culture. And I was thinking a lot today about what's real versus what's a facade. And I heard an interview, and forgive me, I can't even say who the artist was because I don't remember her name, but she has built a huge online persona in social media. And the interviewer asked her about it, and she says, I don't even know who that person is. This person is this personality, this social media person that I put out there, whatever that avatar is. That's not me. I don't know who that person is, but that's who the world thinks I am. And I've
Hmm.
had to start distancing myself from that. I was like, ooh, ouch. Not a place you want to find yourself.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk today specifically about pop culture. And here's the concept. Here's the framework. And then Lydia, I'm going to ask you some questions and we can start to go back and forth about this a little bit. The concept is this: entertainment is one thing, examples or role models are quite another. Do you know the difference between the two? Or another way to say it, you are what you eat. And I was telling Lydia before this call that back when I was a kid in school, the government started a program that was the main slogan: "You are what you eat," and they were trying to get kids to eat healthier diets. And they gave whole units of study on what was healthy food and what wasn't. And they got it wrong, by the way, largely wrong,
Hmm.
but they tried. But that stuck with me. You are what you eat, and it really is true. You're going to be as healthy as the food you eat. You're not going to be healthy if you're eating crap all the time, right? But it's not just a matter of food. What are you feeding your soul? What are you feeding your
Hmm.
mind and your heart and your persona and your psyche? You are what you eat. I think it's even more true here than it is in the stomach. It's even more
Right.
true that you are what you eat. And so, as you're developing from this forgivable 3-year old, innocent, lovely, joyful, into whatever the adult version of yourself becomes, if you go through that progression, then what you're eating shapes the outcome enormously. So let's talk about pop culture. Lydia, can you think of anybody that had a huge impact on pop? I have a hard time saying, I want to say pulp
The
instead of pop. Anyway, who had a
citrus
huge
culture.
impact? Who shaped what was popular over the years? Reach back even before you were born.
Was Madonna before I was born?
I think she started around that time.
Started
No, she was around
around.
when I was in high school. Madonna was definitely before you were born. And
Ah.
so maybe I'm incorrect to say that she was one of the first big ones.
Mm.
It's probably when I became aware because I was old enough to be aware, right? It's probably when I became aware, but Madonna was a huge one. Um, she shook the world with lyrics to songs that were just not acceptable. And she acted
Mm.
in a way that was just not acceptable. But what's not acceptable, right? That's just the way she was perceived. And it worked. She became amazingly famous and had huge power over the generation that was kind of like, I'm not so much worried about what the old generation thinks is good or bad. I want to be me. And Madonna was a symbol of that. She was a symbol of you do you, screw everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I think she was one of the first to really set that trend, but that would be unfair because there were people before. The Rat Pack, this is way before my time. This is my parents' generation, maybe when they were in high school. But it was 4 men in Hollywood who got a reputation for being rebels. The Rat Pack. Do you know who they were?
Mm, I mean, I could guess. Who were they?
I can't name them all, but it was people like Frank Sinatra.
Right. Okay,
And
that's what I was thinking. Like Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and all of
I'm
the
not I'm not
crooner
even
dude
sure who
bros.
was in it, but they had cigarettes rolled up in their shirt sleeves in
Right.
their white t-shirts. God forbid they wore a white t-shirt in public and rolled up their cigarettes in it. They were setting a
Whoa,
standard for
dang.
being a rebel. So it's kind of the thing that's been going on forever because everyone's like, I don't want to be like my old man or instead they want to be something fresh and new. And then they look other
Right.
places for it and they find somebody who says, you could be cool like me.
Is that
So
where the transatlantic accent originated in Hollywood, do you think?
you know more about that than I do.
Well, doll, I could tell you. but I'm gonna have to talk like this.
It was fake. It was not American, nor was it European, nor it was just Hollywood.
Yeah, it was an American, British, something else. It was a conglomeration of everything, but you had to learn the transatlantic accent if you were going to make it in Hollywood back then.
And it wasn't really authentically an accent, is my understanding. It's the way that everyone's trying to be,
Right.
pretending
Yep.
to
It
be.
was the Hollywood persona that we're talking about.
Okay, let's
Uh,
modernize. We went way back. Okay. We can name some
okay, doll.
people more recently, right? Okay, so we said the Rat Pack, Madonna. Who else?
More recently, with the explosion of technology, there have been a lot of people that are all influencing pop culture, but I do think that they're all on the same wavelength, which is
Hmm.
super interesting. But people like, One Direction, or most recently Harry Styles or Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift, or um, maybe not so much Ed Sheeran. I think that he's kind of doing his own thing. I haven't really seen him want to influence pop culture as much as just put out really good music and have fun doing
Hmm.
it.
There's always
Um,
that. There are always people that are, I would just say, authentic, right?
yeah.
And I don't know if we can put that label on Ed Sheeran or not. We can ask him if we ever meet him on the street. Um, what about Britney Spears? So I remember Britney Spears was huge around actually the turn of the new millennium. So about the time you were born, right?
Right.
And so Britney Spears was huge and she was putting out persona. I was kind of like, oh, you are doing the Madonna thing. I realized it. You're trying to push the envelope, get the shock factor, and push pop culture like Madonna did. And then
Right.
what about Miley Cyrus, Lady Gaga? The list goes on and on and on, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so all of these people had some overlap. They're not all the same. I don't want to stereotype, but I would say that they were putting on a persona because they had a really good manager and producer that knew how to get lots of attention. And
Right.
actually in the time of like Britney Spears, it was to sell CDs. And then it became downloads and then YouTube videos and streaming media and all this kind of stuff more recently. But these producers, I'm just going to say it, there's some real sharks in the water. They would take someone who had potential and turn that person into something else. And then you throw a lot of fame and money at a very, very young person and say, keep doing this and do it more. And it can be very appealing. I think that it's the siren's call.
Yeah. So for
And
our listeners that don't know, can you just briefly explain a little bit about what the siren's call means?
yeah, so it's from Greek, well, from what? The Odyssey?
Yeah. Homer.
It's so from Homer. Um, and what was happening is that as the ships would sail by these cliffs, the sirens were these beautiful women who would sing this glorious melody that no man could resist. And so they would steer their ships closer to the cliffs because they had to take in more of this amazing, intoxicating beauty until they crashed into the rocks and died. So it's a metaphor or even an archetype,
Right.
right? The siren's call means the angel of light that is the will o' the wisp that tries to lead you astray. And so when someone says a siren's call, it could be vast wealth or fame or notoriety, and people do they literally sell their souls to the devil for it. And when I say that, I don't mean there's a real devil that they're selling their soul to. That's another metaphor for the same thing. It's I will give up who my authentic self is and who I really want to become if I could just have money instead.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of kids that start out in that world are so impressionable and everyone is telling them to do it that by the time they realize what's going on. You know, they're in their late teens or early 20s, and they're just realizing, oh my gosh, wait, what is going on? You know, it's child star syndrome.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And then people that follow and pattern their lives after these fake personas, right? Because the Madonna that people got to know, the public Madonna, was not the Madonna who you would see at home, right?
Right.
It was a made up personality. And that's one of the reasons why I say entertainment's entertainment, right? Um, if we think of these things as entertainment, we say they're acting, they're putting on a show, they're trying to elicit some sort of a fun response from the audience. That's fine.
Right.
That's fine. But I saw something else happening with Hannah Montana that became Miley Cyrus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was little girls everywhere were emulating Hannah Montana. And it was merchandising. They were buying Hannah Montana t-shirts, purses, shoes, pants, pretending to be Hannah Montana. It was a whole franchise built around a little girl and a persona that wasn't even real. Can you imagine growing up as that person?
It would be so hard.
It's
And
so hard.
it's taken to such an extreme level now too, where, you know, the moment that somebody sees the celebrity that has that persona that they've just
Mm,
idolized so much, then they start doing crazy things, you know, like throwing things at their favorite celebrity on stage as they're singing. You know, it just becomes not even that there's a human in front of me. It's the persona that's in front of me that has so much
yeah.
power over me that I want to mess with it.
That's it's kind of weird. So this is the overwhelming influence of pop culture among people who are trying to be cool, trying to become something bigger than self. They're like, I'm not satisfied where I am, and if I could only be that. And so we do lots of things. Um, I'd like to go down a list of other ideas besides just music or artists and entertainers. What about what if I could only drive the right car? Then I'd be cool. Or if I could wear the right clothing, right? What about if I had the right persona? If I could act cool like he acts, I'd be cool too. If my personality was like, so we emulate behavior to try to become bigger than ourselves. Ideologies. This is kind of a big one these days. Ideologies, we talk about ideals on this program and how they're not really achievable. Ideology, the study of an ideal, right? The ideology is the thought that, well, the world would be perfect if it were just like XYZ. And usually the ideology is unfounded and it's impossible. That's why it's an ideology in the first place. But people become militant even about promoting the ideology. And what happens is it becomes a social expectation. If you don't align with this ideological concept about whatever the controversial thing is, if you don't align with that, then you're not with us. You're bad because we're moral because we adopt the ideology and everyone else is scum. And I exaggerated that for effect on purpose. But people align with ideologies, not even understanding what they mean or where they came from, just because that'll make them cool too. Um, Sexiness. If I were just sexier, I can show more skin, I can get more attention, I could be sexier somehow, sexiness. That's another one. Um, and a lot of it has to do with being shocking, the shock factor of it. And that's
Right.
what you see in these personalities that we've already just talked about. Quite often, they do something to move the bar, right, to a new shocking level because they get media attention for it. Can I be a little less dressed? Um, some of you may remember the history of the wardrobe malfunction with Janet Jackson during the Super Bowl. They said it was an accident. Clearly, it was planned and it worked. They got so much promotion out of a wardrobe failure. And I'm just saying, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it was an accident. I mean, it matched the lyrics to the song they were singing and the timing of the lyrics of the song. It was planned. But that's not the point. The point is this pop culture is fake. Now, if you just want to call it, it's just good entertainment, and you know that, well, that's one thing. You're aware. That's great. But if you are trying to emulate what is fake, a supermodel was once asked, was it like to be you, the supermodel? And the supermodel responded, I don't know. It'd be really cool to find out.
Right.
Meaning, the persona of the supermodel was so fake that the real person was like, I don't know who that person is. Matter of fact, they take pictures of me, and whatever gets published isn't even the picture. They airbrush it, they touch it up, they change everything about it. And then I see it, I'm like, whoa, that's not me.
Yeah. I think that, with all of this pop culture stuff and just, belonging to a fandom or, following an artist on tour all around the country, and screaming at them along with all of the thousands of other people that are in the auditorium. I think that it stems from a deep need for um, finding belonging and finding your
Absolutely.
identity. People are trying to find a sense of self-worth and I belong here and this is my identity, but they're looking for it in some pretty unsustainable places.
Yeah. And inauthentic places and fake.
Right.
If we start emulating some persona that some producer or manager came up with, we emulate something that someone is pretending to be because they know that it'll get a lot of money. But we're emulating something that's not real because suddenly that's been labeled as cool. And where could that lead us? So I want to say, just for clarification, all of that pop culture stuff, if you look at it as entertainment, then I applaud these people. They're amazing entertainers, great actors and actresses. Um, it's just like, wow, good for you. You know how to play the game. But if they try to become the persona that they are playing on the stage, then it usually ends very, very poorly. They end up in rehab and jail and prison. And I mean, think about the names that we went over and how many of them ended up with drug addictions and serious problems. You just hear about them in the
Right.
news all the time. And they move from, from the Grammys to the tabloids.
Right.
All right. And then it just becomes gossip and disgusting. And so why are we talking about this? I think really it's the facade versus the real. And the question is, what do you want to be? And
Hmm.
who are you emulating in your life? Who's your role model? Who's your example? But if you are what you eat, how can you be real if everything you ever eat is fake? So that might be convicting for all of us, myself included. But if you spend all of your time consuming this pop culture facade, this make believe world that's out there to earn money for a few people, if you're consuming that as a steady diet, then what do you become if you are what you eat? How does your brain begin to be impacted by that? What are your expectations for life and the way that you want to be treated and received and respected? And
Yeah, it plays into so many different things. Even something as simple as the hormones that are released in your brain. A lot of
absolutely.
times, um, pop culture offers instant gratification,
Mm-hmm.
um, that gives you a pretty good rush of the feel good hormones in your brain. And
Dopamine.
yeah, dopamine and sometimes oxytocin. And that's why pop culture in a lot of ways is so seductive and addictive, because
That's
it
why it is a
actually,
siren's call.
right, yeah, it releases those hormones in your brain, and you start craving those micro highs that those hormones give you, but they're artificial. But you're wondering why you're falling in love with a specific celebrity or a music artist or something. It's because
Yeah.
those hormones are being released in your brain whenever um, you're doing some operant conditioning on yourself. You're associating those feelings of happiness and euphoria with this fake persona of somebody.
Right. Well said. And dopamine, by the way, is extraordinarily addictive. It's the body's natural cocaine. And it is good in the sense that it leads us toward, it gives us passions to pursue, and helps out with procreation a lot. Dopamine is nature's way of making you feel really, really good sometimes, but it's like you can't feast every day or you'll be obese and sick, right? The feast is for the really special occasion every now and then. And I'm not saying don't have fun. Absolutely not. Have fun, but don't be addicted to dopamine. And
Right.
yeah, the pop culture really targets that dopamine release because people get hooked on it, and then you're addicted to the persona of the artist.
Right. Yeah,
I mean, it's
pretty
very
spooky,
similar
isn't it?
addiction. It's very similar addiction to pornography. Same
Right.
thing in a way.
Yeah.
It's just maybe it's. I mean, it can take on different forms. It doesn't have to be sexual, for instance. It could be a thirst for power or popularity or control, or a lot of other things. The desire to be famous, which I never really understood, but people do have that desire. I get it. And it's addictive. And so
Mhm.
you are what you eat. I just keep coming back to that because honestly, I very commonly see in our culture people that are having a constant diet of this sort of pop culture entertainment. And I think, do they know it's entertainment, or do they think that that's how life really is? Because it's not the way that life really is. That's not what a rewarding life really is.
And it
Um,
leaves you wanting more too, because for a lot of people, they pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to get 2 minutes with this persona of a person,
mm,
the VIP backstage pass sort of thing.
yeah,
And it just always leaves you wanting, because the reality is that you're wanting to finally uh, have that confirmation that your identity and your sense of belonging is in the right spot, which is why people pay so much money for that. But it's, man, it's just like I keep saying in previous episodes, I just love the analogy of the end of the rainbow that just keeps moving.
yeah.
It's not super satisfying to find your identity and your belonging in a persona of somebody.
You know, I have to reprimand us a little bit here, Lydia, because what we just did, which needs to be done, we just called out what's wrong, what the problem is, without offering a solution,
So,
which
Dad, what do we do?
one of these days we're going to talk about Karl Marx. And speaking of ideologies, we're not going to do it today, but that's a perfect example. Karl Marx called out what was wrong with the current system of the day, and he was right about that part, I guess. But he didn't have any solutions that were viable, and 100 million people are dead because of him. And he called out the problem without offering a reasonable solution, and 100 million people were murdered over this. We'll get into that another day, but it just is a reminder. What's the solution? What do you
Are
think,
you
Lyd?
asking me or am I
I'm
asking
asking you,
you?
Lydia. Fix this
I
problem.
asked you
What's the
first.
solution? Okay, you go, then I'll go. One-liners. Give me a one-liner. What's the solution?
Being cognizant about where you're trying to build your foundation.
Yes. I was going to say eat real food. Don't always eat the candy bar. Eat real food. And what that means to me is you don't get a dopamine rush out of studying Socrates. Most people don't. But Socrates might have more long-term benefit for you than Madonna.
Yeah.
So I use Madonna because they're both ancient ideas. I didn't really mean Madonna or Socrates for that matter. But eat real food. Your turn, Lyd.
I I would say make sure that where you're placing your identity and your sense of belonging, make sure that you're placing both of those things in a sustainable spot that you can thrive from.
I had a friend who was chasing after a gal that he just was smitten by. And she was a great gal. I don't blame him. But one day, after months of this, he finally came up to me and he said, I think I want a real wife.
Oh dang.
I was like, okay, you grew up, dude. Right on. And he married a real wife instead of this fake persona that he had created about this other gal, this crush he had with someone who probably didn't even really exist. Who knows what his mind had imagined for how this gal really was. She was on the pedestal, so to speak.
Right.
So I say this, yeah, get real. Just get real.
I would say kind of what you were saying before, just try to look at entertainment as entertainment and
Mm.
not an opportunity to join a cult.
Join a cult. You said it. Um, I'd like to
It
say
sounds
this.
harsh, but think about it.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah. Like we said in a previous show, everybody worships something. What are you worshiping? So, expectations. If you allow the pop culture to set your expectations, you will never be satisfied. The people that are even pretending to be these personas, their expectations aren't being met in reality either. It doesn't work. So, set some expectations that you think could be truly rewarding in your life.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Well,
one.
any
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, what?
No, no, go
I
ahead.
I
Your
was
turn.
just gonna ask about any closing thoughts that you might have because I think that we're about out of time.
Yeah. I think the main thing is that if you are what you eat, then try to balance out your life a little bit. Don't just go after the dopamine rush over and over all the time. And that can be comedians, it can be the kind of music you listen to, and music is a big one because the actual music itself, even without words or personas, music can trigger the dopamine rush and the adrenaline rush. So instead of just going for the dopamine all the time, seek things that are meaningful. And so it's like, oh, what if I backed off of that steady diet and took a little time on something that really, really matters? And I think that could be relationships with people you love. It can be learning things that are going to be valuable skills. It can be hobbies where you can sharpen your mind. It can be making your own music, becoming a musician or an artist or a writer. It can be reading good literature instead of just feeding yourself with this constant pop culture. I think that there's so much wisdom in the Bible, and that meditation and prayer and thoughtfulness about what grace is and love is. I really encourage everyone that you can't just stop something without replacing it with something good. So instead of starving to death because you quit eating candy bars, why not eat some healthy food and see how enriching that can be and how fulfilling that can be? That's it.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, I know I always say this, but now sounds kind of funny. You are what you eat, and I hope that we gave you some food for thought.
And we do love you guys. That's why we're here doing this. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.